Hey everybody. So I've been getting a few questions to go over my process for how I built a model and what it does and how does it build lineups and play DraftKings. So I'm going to go over UFC because that's probably the simplest model that I have and probably the simplest algorithm for building lineups. I'm going to look at right now how am I going to attack this slate this weekend, the MMA 350K Throwdown 100K to first, a very top heavy contest with 150 max entries. So let me start running my code because it takes some time and I'll explain what's going on. The first step of what I do is in this parser file. What I do is I go out to the internet and I scrape data. I'm looking for information that will help me explain how the scoring works and simulate the scoring and make projections. The most important aspects of UFC scoring on DraftKings are significant strikes, you get half a point for each, and takedowns, you get 5 for each, and knockdowns, 10. And then the fight conclusion bonuses for when you finish the fight. Generally, you want fighters who are going to win in the first or second round or early and get a knockdown, or you want fighters who go to decision in a longer fight with a lot of significant strikes. Generally, if you can get about 100 points for a fighter, you got a shot at winning. So my first site I go to is ESPN Fight Center. That just gives me UFC stats on all the fighters. So here's the significant strikes landed per minute on the top 2 fighters in the card, 4.58, 4.07. Roughly, they're going to throw that volume in the fight coming up, but you have to adjust that because it's not going to be exact. Takedowns average, 0.78 takedowns per fight. That's for a 3-round fight usually. They're fighting 5 rounds in the main event. But takedown average here is 3. So I can expect that Jessica Andrade is going to be throwing a lot of takedowns and a lot of significant strikes. She's one of the higher volume fighters in the card. So we can expect her to be showing up in a lot of our simulations. So once I have that data, I go to Best Fight Odds. Best Fight Odds has a lot of odds for DraftKings, for UFC overall. The interesting stuff here isn't until you look at the props. What I care about for DraftKings scoring is who wins and when they win, and what method they win. So what I'm looking at here is scrolling down to Ortega wins in round 1. That's the important line here. Plus 800. That means roughly 1 in 9 times he's going to win in the first round. So 1 in 9 of my simulations better have him winning in the first round. I do that for all the different possibilities of when they can win the fight, for round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or by decision. When I do my simulations, I make a few thousand of these. For each simulation, I'm going to pick a winner of the fight based on really one of these outcomes, who wins in what round, or by decision. And then I simulate the strikes landed and the takedowns. Strikes landed and takedowns are roughly what you've done historically. You get a little boost for winning, because obviously winning fighters are going to have higher strike rates or takedown rates. Losing fighters are going to get beat up a little bit more. And then some random noise jitter on there, just because the fighting isn't exact. This is our averages. Across past fights, we need to make a simulation. You could have a ceiling performance and just have an incredible output. So I'm running those simulations here, and I built about 1,500 lineups. From each simulation I made, I took the optimal lineup. So given the salary restrictions from DraftKings and the scoring outputs that I had, assume that happened, pick me the optimal lineup. I make 1,500 of these such lineups that were optimal in their simulation. I'm going to make sure they're all unique, so if one lineup should come up multiple times, it doesn't get thrown in at the end multiple times. 1,500, that's just for this example. Usually I do actually a lot more. Then I run a tournament. That's the simulating part. Here I have all my lineups I've made, in this case 1,500, and I run a tournament. I take a new simulation, a fresh one that none of them have seen before, and I run as a DraftKings contest. A very top-heavy contest, score it, give them payouts. I run that a couple thousand times. Here I just did 2,000 for simplicity. Usually I do about 10,000. And then the top lineups are the ones that profit the most over time. So they're the ones you expect to be profiting if I submit them. I print out the results at the end. So here's an example. What I've run, you shouldn't use this because there's 2 fights missing, so adding those fights in changes up the balance of the entire card. But you can see how it does. Like the main event 5-round fight, which should have the highest scoring, it usually will have the highest scoring, and this week the price isn't prohibitive on either of them, should be in about 100% of lineups. So 35% will have Ortega, 59% have Chen Sung Jung, Korean Zombie. So 95% of my lineups have one of the main event fighters. That seems about right. Maybe even higher, should be better, but that seems about right. Like I said earlier, Jessica Andrade is a high volume fighter who's favored to win. So that's why I'm putting her in 64.7% of my lineups in this simulation. Then after I've computed the 150 best lineups, I look at which one actually scored the highest across all 2,000 simulations, and that's the one I'll enter in single entry contests. Now, this is not a cash lineup. This is a single entry tournament contest lineup. So in this case, you take the main event, the favorite in the main event, of course. Then you take the high volume fighter, like I said, and then a couple of other favorites, but for example, it likes this underdog. Usually you'll pick 1 or 2 underdogs in a fight in the card. And that's how I create my 150 lineups. And I submit them up to Draftkings, and hopefully they do well. Subscribe to the channel to get updates for when I post a new video, and comment down below what topics you want me to address, and I'll try to make a video about them.